Are you sitting here by yourself?
My sick self.
With your box of tissues next to you?
Oh, I got yep. My grandson, when he's a little better now, but when he was really sick with this virus, he's 5 years old, and he was just like, he wadded up tissue, and he had like two tissues like this sticking out of his. He was like walking around the house like this because it was just like coming out of his. He was just like a snot machine. It was really adorable. He didn't, 5-year-olds don't really know how to blow their nose.
Well, trust me, my 2-year-old granddaughter had the snuffles for all that time, except she didn't like to blow her nose, so she would let it drip down her nose, and then she'd go wipe it on anybody's clothes that were close.
On anybody's clothes, right?
And that was like, okay, stop, don't do that. I finally started bringing my own tissues down when I went to meet him. It's like, here, I brought tissues.
Yeah,
This is for you. But no,
I know.
she
Well,
didn't
when they were
do it.
babies, you could sort of like, well, when Audrey was a baby, you could suction him out, but he's not going to let us do that now.
No, that doesn't work now. So I see Robin trying to
I
get
think
on
it's
here.
just the three of us. Robin's just signing in.
Okay.
Our lonely selves. Hi, Robin.
Hey. I know, it's like, is this really the holidays?
I'm sorry that we had to do this.
I've been trying this week to get all my business done. It's like, oh my gosh, I got so many things to catch up on. So
Well, I've just been in bed for a week, so I'm like in a little bit of a zone here. You probably didn't catch this. I got RSV.
oh no.
That virus that's getting young children, and I got it from my grandson, and I have been really sick. I've been really, haven't had not like a regular cold. It's like terrible, like the flu.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So it's just us, and why don't I just I'll just take minutes. So we call the meeting for 3 p.m. Conservation Commission, and we have Miriam DeFont and Mary David and Robin Harrington here. And we only have one agenda item, which is to talk, give you an update and make a couple of motions regarding the conservation area acquisition, the Pearson lot. So things have been kind of fast and furious for the last week or two. It was kind of like, no action and then hurry up. So the closing needs to happen in the next few weeks because the sale is contingent on a $200,000 grant from the federal government. And that grant expires at the end of January.
Ah.
And so Donna McNichol has been reviewing various documents related to the sale. It's very complicated because there's this purchase and sale agreement, and then there's a contract with the state about the grant money. And then as we reviewed last summer, there's a conservation restriction that has to be granted as a condition of the Community Preservation Act grant. That conservation restriction is granted to another entity, so it has to be granted to the Kestrel Land Trust. And then I don't even know what else so those are some of the complicated pieces of all of this. And just to remind you guys about how the finances work, because it's super complicated, Kestrel already has purchased the property and owns it. So they're selling it to us for, I believe the price is $265,000. $197,000 of that and change is coming from the federal government, from the Forest Legacy Program. 20,000 of it comes from our Conservation Trust Fund, and 45,000 comes from the CPA fund. We originally had asked for 50,000 with the idea that 5,000 of it was going to be used for developing a parking area, but we found that that parking area expense is not eligible under the CPA. So that extra $5,000 is going to need to come from our Conservation Trust Fund. So really it comes down to 25,000 from our trust fund, 45,000 from the CPA. Is that right? And then the 197,000 that I mentioned. And then Kestrel has found another donor to make up a couple thousand to bring that contribution to 200, to make it the numbers all add up. And then Kestrel is covering all of the closing costs, the land survey, some of the administrative costs for doing all the applications that have to be done. And then there's a one-time piece of funding that goes to Kestrel to pay for their managing the conservation restriction. And you remember we reviewed that conservation restriction document last summer. You know, it has all these kind of requirements about what are permitted uses and non-permitted uses. One of the things that has to happen with a conservation restriction is that there has to be a, what they call a baseline survey. I'm looking for my water bottle. There has to be a baseline survey done of the conditions on the property that I don't think has been done yet. So for the conservation restriction, I'm trying to keep my brain straight. The document was sent to the State Division of Conservation Services. They have to approve it before it can be enacted and then recorded legally as a legally binding document. It was submitted in September, and they are short-staffed and they are months behind in processing these things. And so now we're 3 months into waiting and it still hasn't been approved. And what we've been told, I'm not sure actually if this is correct, but this is what we're being told, is that the CPC cannot release the $45,000 until the conservation restriction has been approved. And we have to close now in January without the conservation restriction being approved. So it's a catch-22. And where is the $45,000 going to come from if it's on hold because the CR hasn't been approved? So I suggested perhaps we should consider authorizing kind of a bridge loan from the Conservation Land Trust, since there's about $95,000 in it, to authorize the expenditure of $45,000 additionally, so we can close on the property before we lose the $200,000 and then eventually get reimbursed by the CPC. It's just, you know, moving money from one pot to another. It's all very confusing.
Oh, God.
To make it even more confusing, and this is just crazy to me, but Kestrel owns the property. They're selling the property to us. So the state is giving us the $200,000. And then we have to transfer that money to Kestrel. So there's like, it has to get transferred from the federal government and the state. There's a state agency with DCR that manages this Forest Legacy program for the federal government. So it's coming through the state, and then comes to us, and then we give it to Kestrel. I think that's how it works. So confused.
Wow.
Then
So
to make
So
it,
we'll be rich for a couple of days.
so then to make it even more complicated, because that's not complicated enough, Donna is advising us and the town that the vote at the annual town meeting last May was insufficient to authorize the purchase of the property. And that we need to have another town meeting, a special town meeting, in order to approve the purchase of the land and to approve the granting of the conservation restriction to Kestrel. And so they're going to be scheduling a special town meeting for January 19th of this month. And Becky is preparing the warrant articles for it. I'm a little confused about all of this. I forwarded to you a legal advisory from a land trust coalition that seemed to suggest that it isn't necessary to have a second annual town meeting vote if the initial town meeting voted for the CPA funds, that implies that the purchase is approved. And because a conservation restriction is required under CPA, you don't have to have a second vote by town meeting. And that it could be approved by like the select board or the conservation commission, but she's town council and this is what she's advising us. So as long as it all works, then that's the most important thing.
Right.
We don't want this to fall through, so.
Yikes.
So Donna wanted me to get the commission to make a couple motions. And actually what I did, just to make it a little clear, was I wrote up some draft language for a motion and I thought I could pull it up. If I can find it, hang on one sec. Just so we get it right. Where is it? Okay, so the first thing was that Kestrel named the conservation area for their purposes, and I thought we should probably make a formal vote around the naming of the property. I'm fine with the name that they have agreed on. If you guys are, they're calling it the West Quabbin Woodlands Conservation Area.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And since all the contract documents are referring it to it, is that, I mean, it's kind of a nice name, West Quabbin Woodlands. Okay. So somebody want to make a motion?
So what does a motion need to say?
Here, let me pull up.
Is it saying that we approve the name or what do
Yeah,
we?
let me,
Okay,
can you see my document?
yep.
Okay, so that was my thought.
Okay, so I move to approve the naming of lot R15 conservation property, West Quabbins Woodlands Conservation Area.
Okay, second.
I second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
Font, Harrington.
Aye.
So the next thing is to approve, I think, just to be on the safe side, let's approve the use of the $25,000 that we originally committed to. I think we already did make a vote when we approved this application way back when,
Mhm.
but I think let's just do it again. So, and I thought, let's break it down because it changed to $20,000 for the purchase and then $5,000, which would be designated for the development of the parking area, trails and signage. I'm imagining we're going to need more funds for the trail development. But I don't think this is going to be sufficient. There's a brook. Amethyst Brook is on the property, so if the trail is going to have to go over Amethyst Brook, which means there's going to have to be a little footbridge built. And probably there's some other spots where there's some wetland crossings. So the trail development, we may want to apply for like a grant next year, perhaps.
Okay.
Trail development and for better signage, but just to get us out the door. So somebody
So
want
I'll move to authorize the use of 25,000 from the Conservation Trust Fund for the acquisition of lot R15 as conservation land, 20,000 of which for the purchase and 5,000 of which will be designated for the development of parking area, trails, and signage.
Okay, second.
I second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, Harrington.
Aye.
Okay. So then the next piece is this $45,000. Again, as I think, so this is what I'm thinking is the wording.
Okay, so I move to authorize use of 45,000 of the Conservation Trust Fund for the purchase of our lot R15, which amount shall be reimbursed by the CPA fund upon the recording of a conservation restriction for the property.
And second,
I second.
David,
Aye.
DeFont, Harrington.
Aye.
Okay, so then the final thing is that I'd like to ask the commission to appoint me officially as the project manager for the project. I mean, I'm basically for the last several months have been functioning as the manager and been interacting with Bridget Likely and kind of being a liaison with town council and the town administrator and communicating with the select board. But going forward, there's going to be more administrative tasks involved in this. And there may be some situations where, I may have to make some executive decisions. And it's possible that we're going to need to have somebody sign something.
So as project manager, does signing need to be called out separately?
I think so, just to make it clear.
Okay.
Now, originally, when I had communicated with Kestrel, they had said that in similar projects that they have worked on, I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. This is easier. For similar projects, there's been a representative from a conservation commission, like a chair or a conservation agent, who is the signer for the contract for the grant and the project manager and signed the purchase and sale agreement because conservation commissions have the authority to buy land. Donna is advising that the select board should be the signatory for the contracts, which is fine. It doesn't matter to me who signs. But if there is anything that needs to be signed that comes up that I'm not anticipating, there was a couple of letters that came up. I don't know if you remember this earlier. There was a letter that I signed that we reviewed back in November. Is this ringing a bell?
Yes.
Yes. So there might be things
Okay.
like that or communicating with a CPC or whatever. So I think that having me be appointed the project manager and giving me signing ability if needed be would be a good idea.
So I'd like to make a motion that.
Let me put it back. I got it.
Oh, you got it written already? I was.
You have it written?
Okay, I can make this up.
Yeah, here we go. You see that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I move to authorize Miriam DeFont to act as project manager on behalf of the Conservation Committee for the Lot R15 property acquisition and to take any actions relative thereto, including acting as a signatory for any necessary documents.
I second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, Harrington.
Aye.
I guess I could have abstained. I'm not supposed to vote for myself, but I don't know. I don't know if we would have needed, do I need to? We have a quorum. Do we need 3 votes though? I can't remember. Well, whatever. Okay, I voted for myself. We'll just.
Well, if
leave
they don't like it, we can redo it.
it. Okay.
Have no fear. So do we also need to make a recommendation? I know you're talking about the warrant that that this property, that it be added to it, that this property be under the management of the Conservation Committee?
Well, I got them to, yeah, I mean, that was one of my concerns, was that the warrant article originally was asking the town to approve the purchase of the property for the purposes of conservation and passive recreation. And I was a little concerned that it didn't have the language, including that the property was to be managed by the Conservation Commission. And my concern was that if there's ever any question in the future about the fact whether or not the Conservation Commission is managing the property, somebody might go back to the original town meeting vote. And I thought it would be good to make that explicit. It is in the deed. The deed makes it explicit. So it may be overkill because, you know, ultimately when you go to the deed, that is kind of the document that would say how the land is supposed to be used. But I felt like the voters should know what's in the deed, like the warrant should reflect the same language that's an the deed. So I asked if they could add a clause saying that it would be under the management of the Conservation Commission, and Donna agreed to that.
Oh, okay, so then because I agree. As much as we've done all these difficult things lately, I do think it should be clear who's managing it. So the question doesn't come up again and we have to go
Right.
through this again.
Do you remember what happened back a year ago when we were having this whole discussion about Southbrook Conservation Area and the town beach and the boat ramp? And
Yes,
there was a discussion about the original town meeting vote to purchase that parcel and the fact that that town meeting vote didn't mention the Conservation Commission. Do you remember,
yes, and there was some question as whether that was a valid vote, and yes,
Donna, you remember, Donna, Robin, you remember that? And
yes.
then there was this whole question of, well, like maybe the town never meant the Conservation Commission to ever manage it, and maybe it should be the Recreation Committee that manages it, or who knows what they really wanted back in 1965. So I just thought, like, let's just make it really clear. And also voters should know, so.
I
because-
also think, didn't at that time it come up that the property that when you buy it under this Conservation Act has to be managed by the Conservation Commission and not open space committees? I seem to recall that discussion too, that was a requirement.
You know, I was looking at the regulations, and the regulations mention examples that all involve Conservation Commissions managing. I don't know if it's a requirement, but you know, that's kind of what we're tasked with. And we have management of the other properties, so.
Yes, okay, yes. Okay, I'm fine with
Just, you
that.
know, somewhere down the line, we're gonna have to develop a management plan for this parcel, and we've talked about trying to develop a universal kind of management plan for all of the conservation areas with regulations.
Right.
And so I just think it should be really clear that that's kind of what conservation commissions do. I don't expect that average voters in Shutesbury would be aware that this is what conservation commissions do. So I thought that it would be good to put that in. So it's going to be in. I think that's a good thing. And if there's any discussion at the town meeting, I hope you guys come. You know, I don't know who comes at, you know, in the middle of the winter. It'll probably be in the evening. It'll be indoors. I don't know where they'll do it. Maybe they'll do it at the gym. I hope they do it at the gym at the school. I feel like, I can't hear you, Robin. I can't hear you, Mary. You're muted.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I'm
had,
sorry.
to,
Yeah.
I had to turn my phone off because it was like so yes, they'd have to do it someplace because I don't think it's going to be warm then.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. So I hope they do it in the gym because right now with all these viruses going around, nobody wants to be in a
Right.
green. But there's some other items I think they're going to be putting on the warrant. There's a whole bunch of other things like the solar zoning bylaw has to be, there's a revision that's going to be voted on. So there'll be some other,
No, it's gonna be painful then.
people. I hope not.
Yeah.
But there were going to be some people turning up for that. I think because of the solar zoning thing, they might actually get a good turnout because, either for or against, people will show up about it.
Right.
So one other thing that I just found out that I got a meeting from Eric Stocker. So this dam committee commission that they're doing. He just sent a thing for the meeting, and the meeting is going to be January 12th at 7 PM and a second meeting looking to be January 26th at 7 PM. So I did email him and say, these are both conservation committee meetings. He hasn't answered yet, but this went back and forth about doing that. So yeah, it would eliminate a representative from Conservation Committee being able to participate on the committee. So I'm waiting for his response back. So
Yeah, they should do it on a different night.
yeah, it's like there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
But that's his target date for the first meeting, which I thought on my calendar, I have it written down as it was supposed to be January 4th. So how we managed to reschedule it at the same time as Conservation Committee, which should be active on that committee. So
Well, that's the night that we also have the continued hearing for the ANRAD. So I would think maybe Eric would want to be at that. So
one would think.
so I have one other item. Thank you for those votes. And it's an unplanned last minute thing. And I thought, well, I'm just going to pick your brains about it and see if we want to weigh in about this. So the municipal vulnerability plan was this kind of state-sponsored action plan and planning document that the town developed around emergency preparedness, and particularly around climate change and climate action stuff. And it was like a year-long process of developing this document. It has a whole bunch of action steps in it and priorities. And there's a grant program that the town is eligible for because they completed this planning process. And every year they open up applications for new projects. And so we got an email this week from Becky Torres because I became aware, I actually let people know this, that, the window was coming up, like the deadline is coming up in February for these grant applications. I think there you have to send a letter of intent, and then maybe it's in March where you have to have the final application. And so the select board is meeting on January 10th, and they're asking boards to make recommendations around priorities for different areas to develop grant applications. Last year, we supported the town applying for an MVP grant that got turned down. And it was a grant application to get an engineering plan for stormwater management on dirt roads. And, it was the grant application was thrown together by Becky kind of in a hurry. It wasn't a very extensively well-documented grant application, in my opinion. So I'm not surprised that it was denied. I think, it was like a 1-page, 2-page thing from what I could see. Maybe there's more to it than I was given a copy of. So I'm also on ECAC, the Energy and Climate Action Committee, and we're also going to be making some recommendations, but I really wanted to see if we could make a formal recommendation to the select board as the Conservation Commission. In my mind, there's kind of 3 possible high priorities for this kind of grant for the town that is kind of relevance to us. One would be like an engineering plan for stormwater management. That could include like doing a survey of culverts And identifying a plan for culvert repair so that then we could that's been on the town's to-do list. The town doesn't have an inventory of all the culverts, and they
Mhm.
don't do regular inspections.
Really?
of culverts. No, they don't. And I've had this happen on site visits a few times where we've been somewhere looking at a property and we noticed a town culvert that was falling apart. Were you with me, Mary, when we looked at the one on Leverett Road?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and we met with Tim to look at it and it was falling apart. He hadn't seen it. And then there was a culvert down on Locks Pond Road that we looked at, remember, for 375 Locks Pond Road or 387 Locks Pond Road, whichever.
Oh,
that-
yes, yes.
That
Mhm.
culvert also was falling apart.
Oh,
And then I looked at a culvert recently that on Schoolhouse Road where the culvert was falling apart. So that might be an idea. There's stormwater in general, and I know that there's a real need for a stormwater plan down by the lake.
Mhm.
And then the other two things that maybe I was thinking might be easier lifts and easier to get funded is that, there's two major dams in Shutesbury. There's probably more than two, but two that I know of that have been deemed unsafe dams or hazard dams. The dam at the Lake Wyola Dam, needs repairs. And
Right.
we know what kind of repairs it needs. And there's been an engineering inspection of it routinely. It's deemed a high hazard dam, not because it's about to fail, but because if it did fail, there'd be a loss of life and property because of all the houses downstream of it. What's happening is the sluice way, the water goes through this pipe in the dam where the gate is, and it's a plastic pipe, and the plastic pipe is in a square hole, and the grouting around the pipe in the square hole is leaking. And so water is coming around the outside of the pipe rather than through the pipe. And that is, that can damage that kind of leaking can lead to more damage with a dam. So there's a way to repair that, to inject grouting into those holes. It's expensive. It's not something the town can do by itself.
Yeah.
They have to hire a contractor, a special contractor, and there has to be an
Mhm.
engineer and
And
permits.
hopefully that would be an Eric's plan,
So I know LWAC, I think LWAC would love to see that be an MVP plan,
Yes.
because that's a high priority for them. The other issue is it's a privately owned dam, is the dam over on Montague Road at Dudley Pond.
Oh, right.
And that dam is a high hazard dam because it's at risk of failure. It's considered to be an unsafe dam currently. And there are properties just downstream of it, as well as a road and a culvert that could be damaged if that dam fails. And you can get an MVP grant for something on private property. And I think that the landowner would love to get an MVP grant. Would be very cooperative with it. And she has hired an engineering firm that's consulting with her. So she already has an engineering firm on board that
Mhm.
is doing inspections and helping her with monitoring the dam and doing the paperwork that she needs to do every year with the state. But she can't afford to repair that dam. It's unlikely that any private individual could repair that.
Mhm.
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
That
and-
makes sense. Mhm.
And so it seems to me that from an infrastructure perspective and from the perspective of protecting Shutesbury property, that dam would be also be a high priority.
I would think so.
Yep.
And you can't, and even, with stormwater, you can have an MVP grant that addresses private property. So even though, some of the stormwater issues down by the lake are on private roads, you can have an MVP grant.
Mhm, mhm.
I guess the thing with the stormwater for the lake is that they're in the process of trying to get this assessment done by FERCog. That planning assessment.
I'm still
Well,
trying to get the money.
Right. And I guess I wonder, do you wait for that?
No,
And
you just keep moving along, and then if you get it, you can give the
right.
money back or something. I don't know.
So those are the four topics
What
that I was thinking about.
What about the culvert under Lakeview where the beavers keep having a problem?
Well,
To help look at a solution to that problem, other than killing the beavers.
you saw that the Board of Health talked to Mike Callahan, who's that beaver solutions specialist, who said he didn't think there was a way to do anything at that culvert.
I heard that. I didn't see anything official that said that, but
I just heard that as well.
there still should be an official evaluation of what can be done. If
Mhm.
you're gonna keep calling in and doing things and killing animals, that's not a solution. There needs to be a solution found.
Well, there's a couple of other contractors in the area who design these kind of flow protection devices. There's at least two others I found.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure.
So I thought, if this particular contractor feels like there's nothing that can be done, we could ask that the town still get a consult maybe with a different contractor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why we can't with the, if it's not gonna cost the town money, then why not?
Right.
It's and if it's agreeing with the recommendation to fix it, then you have the funds to fix it. Rather than,
Should we write a letter to the select board about it?
well, are we putting it on this? So are you putting,
Well, no, I'm just thinking of that as a separate issue.
okay, you say you
I'm
think that would
not-
be a
Yeah,
separate,
so we're off on a tangent here, but
okay,
I don't know. I think the MVP grant would be for larger things than that. I think.
okay. Okay. So yeah, at some point, I think we should address it.
Well, do we want to do it now? Do we want to follow up since, the iron is hot?
We can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think we should be looking at it, so by the time the problem starts to occur in the spring again, we have some ideas or a plan.
Right.
And I also think that since Wendell was involved, Shutesbury shouldn't make the decision that they're not gonna look at it on their own,
Right. Well, there had been an informal agreement, and I don't know who was going to pay for that. I felt like maybe LWAC was going to pay for it because the highway department didn't have any funds. We can't really pay for it. I don't think we have the funding to pay for it. I would like them to have an assessment and a site visit with the specialist, so we could all be there and look at it and talk about it with the specialist rather than, it just being the highway department going and,
Yeah, somebody who's gonna feed them information or the piece of information that they want to hear rather than all the information.
all right, well,
True.
Well,
about-
maybe we need to ask the whole commission that question. I don't, that's a little different question, so.
well, okay. Put it on the agenda for the next meeting. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
When is your next LWAC meeting, Mary?
The 21st.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So getting back to stormwater or MVP. Do we want to suggest maybe that they think of these 4 topics?
Yeah, I think those are all good topics for us
The
to
two
suggest.
dams, culvert survey,
Mhm.
Yeah,
um, and stormwater engineering. I don't know, stormwater engineering, on the dirt roads, the more, it does seems like our options are very limited on the dirt roads, that it's kind of I'm kind of feeling like it's just a perpetual problem that we have such steep roads, dirt roads with,
But it's also, it's not just a perpetual problem, it's also that nobody is really fixing the roads on an ongoing basis with the correct way of doing it, as opposed to I go out and fix the pothole in front of my house. You know.
Right.
Problem is everybody,
you mean it
does
down,
it- does-
are you talking about at Elwac or down by the lake, you mean?
I'm talking about down by the lake, where the
Yeah.
dirt roads are. What's happening is there's
No,
no.
I was thinking of dirt roads in general in Shutesbury. Oh,
Well, I'm sure it's on all the dirt roads, is that nobody's fixing the dirt roads. It's all individual people in front of their houses or people who are taking it upon themselves to fix it, as opposed to figuring out a plan with the appropriate, I mean, I could fix it then if I had, here's how you fix it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's how often it's inspected,
Yeah.
here's when you fix it. I mean, here people are just filling the holes. The next time it rains, they got holes again because they're
Yeah.
not doing it correctly.
right.
And-
Or they fix something and it causes a problem for some other property owner.
Or they're fixing it and it's not taking into account everything. So I think there ought to be a way to develop a plan. And I do think it's on all the dirt roads, because
yes,
I'm sure the lake is a bigger problem because the drainage is going right into the lake, but Wendell Road is the same way. If you go up and around there, and that runoff comes down the hills here, down onto the roads here too, so. Just like Great Pines comes down onto everything, so.
well, the
yeah.
highway department, the difference is the highway department does repair the dirt roads. But they are problematic, and almost every dirt road has a steep section
Yes,
where there's wetlands at the bottom of that steep section, and it's a problem. And yeah, it's kind of the nature of hills, that the bottom of the hills is where the wetlands are. And
well,
so,
and I also think that they don't have it on a plan with a schedule and a plan with the correct way of doing it. They kind of go and do what they think is the best to fix it when it's a crisis, which isn't always the best solution. There
Yeah.
should be an ongoing plan that says, here's the times we go look at things, or here's what we do, and if it needs to be fixed, here's how we fix it. And it should be standardized.
yes.
Um,
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're in pretty general agreement around the idea that both dams are worthy, as well
Yes.
as
Mhm.
looking at stormwater management at the lake and elsewhere,
Mhm.
with an eye toward engineering and maintenance plans.
Mhm.
And then, I would say a culvert survey, an engineering culvert survey, an assessment. So
Yeah.
that,
We could get ahead of the breakage too.
so that we can prioritize which culverts need to be repaired, and then start looking for funding if we need grants for the
Mhm,
for the
mhm.
repair work. It's-
Right.
There's kind of like two steps here. One is for planning and feasibility, and then the second is action. But I think with an MVP, you can look for an assessment. I might be wrong about that, but I will. So do you want to make a motion, or do you want me just to make a motion? Somebody make a motion.
So I make a motion that we submit to the select board the 4 areas that we discussed today.
Okay, I got them written down.
Oh, good. Second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
Harrington.
Hi.
Good. Good.
Yeah, I can't believe that there isn't, like a completed survey, that they seem surprised when we accidentally come across a damaged culvert doing a site visit. I mean,
Yes,
Yeah,
but
we're under, our town is short staffed. You
Yeah.
know, and it's
Right.
kind of like you're always putting out fires. I understand the highway department's always putting out fires. They're stretched. They don't have time to devote the amount of time it would take to go out and like to map out. And also you need some technology to map out and document where culverts are and assess them.
well, and if I think they had a plan, then maybe they could also make a case for some additional resources to be able to do this.
Mhm.
If they had the background information that said, here's the work, and here's what needs to be done.
Yeah. And it really does have an impact on wetland resource areas. Leslie Carrier. You guys remember Leslie Carrier
Yes.
from Schoolhouse Road?
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? So
Mhm.
she had contacted us because she was concerned that Dan McLean's logging was causing flooding onto Schoolhouse Road. And so I went out and looked at where the flooding was. This was maybe a month ago. And there was flooding. It wasn't flooding the road, but there was a whole area where of a wetland that was in flood, that was flooding, and it was flooding close to the road. But the reason why it was flooding had nothing to do with Dan McLean and his logging plan or his driveway. It had to do with the culvert, and a rock had fallen and was blocking the culvert. And I went with my husband to look at it, and he went out. I wasn't going to do it. And he just climbed into the culvert and pulled the rock out. And then the wetland started draining. So
Oh, I'm sure that's a really good thing for him to be doing at this stage.
my husband,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
My cancer survivor husband,
Yes.
who just
Out in the.
out traipsing around in frozen
Yeah.
wetlands, clearing up
Mhm.
culverts. Yeah,
He's a veteran.
he is a veteran.
Yeah, you can't keep him from doing it, but
No, you can't. He's out right now cutting wood, chainsaw. So he's having fun in the forest. Okay,
all right.
all right. Thank you kindly, everybody.
We need to vote to adjourn, motion to adjourn.
46. Yes, we need to vote to adjourn.
So motion to adjourn.
Second, Miriam seconds. David
Aye.
on I. Harrington.
Aye.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Well, Happy New Year. Enjoy.
Try.
We'll start with, we'll
Happy New
keep the
Year.
ground running next
Hope
week.
for everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.